Hi everybody, this is Varsha Kulkarni. Welcome back to Darwin Academy. Let's discuss the next topic under the chapter Tissues for Grade 9 NCERT. So the next topic is here on the board and that is epidermis. Let us look into all these aspects one after the other, but let's take it slow. Before going into what epidermis is, I hope you have had a look at my previous videos, which includes a quick overview of the entire topic tissues. Then I have discussed something about meristematic tissues and also simple permanent tissues. In the upcoming videos, we'll be looking at complex permanent tissues as well. But before going into that, I thought it would be worthwhile to know more about epidermis. So, epidermis is made up of epidermal tissues, or sorry, epidermal cells, right? So, epidermis is also called as epidermal tissue. It is made up of epidermal cells. So, what are we going to look at here? We will be looking at where all the epidermal tissue is present, what is its job, and if there are any differences between the epidermal tissues found at different places within the plant body. Mind you, epidermis is found in plants, right? We are looking at epidermis. Epidermis can also be called as epidermal tissue, and epidermal tissue is made up of epidermal cells. So, generally this is the outermost layer of the plant body. So, it is the outermost layer. It is present in the root, stem and the leaves. Okay. I hope this much is clear for all of you now. Let's move to the next point, which talks about how these cells are, how are they arranged, so on and so forth. If you look at these cells here, these cells are more or less rectangular in shape. They are arranged one beside the other, leaving no space between the cells. So that is what I mentioned here. Epidermis consists of single layer of cells. There is no intercellular spaces between these cells, and the outer layer is covered by a layer of wax in most of the places, and also the outer surface of the epidermal cells and also their side walls are much more thicker when compared to the inner walls. If you consider this as the inside of the plant and this is the outside of the plant, the outer layer and the sides of the epidermal cells are thicker when compared to the innermost layer of the walls of the epidermal cells. Also, on the outside of the epidermal cells, you see a thin layer of wax. Mostly in the aerial layers of the plant, such as the stems and the leaves, we see a layer of wax covering the layer of epidermal cells. And especially in case of desert plants, this layer of wax which covers the outermost layer of the epidermal cells are thick, okay? And they are made up of a substance called as cutin, which is water resistant. Okay, so this brings me to the next point, which talks about the functions of the epidermal cells. What are the functions of an epidermal cells or epidermal tissue? It actually protects against water loss from the plant, and it protects against any mechanical injury. Also protects the plant against the parasitic fungal invasion. Okay. So if there is any fungi which is parasitic, that means disease causing fungi, which will take away all the nutrients from this plant. If this kind of a fungi would invade the plant, then epidermis will protect the plant. Okay. Parasitic are those, like parasitic fungi are those which will actually start living on the host, very close to the host or very close to the plant, and start taking all the nutrients from the plants, okay, thereby eventually killing the plant. Okay, so in order to protect the plant from such invasions by fungi which are parasitic, then to protect the plant from mechanical injury and also to protect the plant against water loss, we have the entire plant body being covered on the outside by a layer of epidermis. I hope that is clear. And on top of the epidermal layer, we have a layer of wax, okay, and that layer of wax is made up of cutin. This cutin layer is thick in case of desert plants, but why should that be so? In order to prevent water loss from the plants, isn't it? But in all the other plants growing in all other places, such as tropical climates, temperate climates, the layer of this wax on the outer surface of the epidermis is slightly thin when compared to those in the desert plants. Okay, and we especially see this waxy layer on the aerial parts of the plant, generally on the leaves, on the stems. All right. So, also I would like to take you through a few little variations of this epidermal cells. Okay, so um, this epidermal cell or the epidermis is continuous, like I mentioned. Okay, but what happens in case of leaves? Leaves are also covered by epidermis. Okay, and the outer layer of the epidermis will have a thin layer of wax made up of cutin. But these cells in the leaf or the leaves are not continuous. Okay, they are interrupted by guard cells and in between by stoma. Okay, so let me repeat. In case of the leaf, the epidermis is interrupted by stomata. Stoma means one, stomata is plural. But why should that happen? Because stomata helps the plants in transpiration, right? You know that water is lost from the body of the plant through the stomata in the form of water vapor, and this process is called as transpiration. And also the stomata helps in the exchange of gases like oxygen and carbon dioxide, which thereby facilitate photosynthesis in plants. I hope I have made myself clear. I will revise all this once I finish discussing a few more aspects of epidermis. Now, what happens in case of root? We all know that root helps the plant to anchor in the soil and also to draw water and mineral nutrients from the soil, isn't it? So, in order to help that process, the epidermis in the root will have unicellular root hairs. Okay, so that maximizes the surface area and thereby helps increased absorption. But what about in case of trees which have a bark? Do they still have epidermis? Now, let's get to that aspect. Initially, when the plant is growing, it will have tender stem, isn't it? It will be covered with epidermis. But as the plant continues to grow and the stem starts turning thick like that of a trunk, what happens is a few cells that are below the epidermis, they are called as cells of the cortex. Okay, what will happen is in that region there will be a specific kind of tissue called as a secondary meristematic tissue. When you hear the term meristematic, you know that they have the ability to divide. Okay, we are calling them secondary meristematic because these are not the first formed meristems, right? They are present just below the epidermis and they form the secondary meristems. You know what will happen in tree trunks? The epidermis which was present earlier will rupture. That means it will break open. The cells which are present just below the epidermis, that region is called as the cortex. That cortex will have secondary meristematic tissues which will start dividing. Okay, and these cells will have a layer of some substance called as suberin. Okay, as a result of the presence of suberin, this new layer of cells will not allow easy escape of gas and water into and out of the tree trunk. Okay, we call this layer as cork. I repeat, initially when the plant is tender, when the stems are tender, they'll be covered on the outermost layer by the epidermis. But as and when the plant will start becoming a tree, the tree will have to develop a tissue called as cork. How is this produced and where is this produced? So initially we all know that there will be epidermal cells in the stem. So slowly it will start rupturing, that means breaking open, and a few cells below the epidermis will have the ability to divide again. Okay, this region is called as cortex, and a few cells within that region will be called secondary meristematic cells. They will start dividing to form newer layers of cells. Okay, these cells will be lined by a substance called as suberin. Okay, and this suberin is impervious to water and gases. So this is what happens in the tree trunk. Okay, so quickly let me reiterate whatever I have discussed, and I have discussed most of it in our regular classes as well. Alright, today we are looking at epidermis. Epidermis is seen in plants and it is generally the outermost layer of any plant organ. So it is present lining the root, stem and leaves on the outside. Just like we have the skin covering us like from the outside, similarly the plant is covered by epidermis. Epidermis is also called as epidermal tissue and it is made up of epidermal cells. These cells are more or less flat, rectangular in nature. They are arranged one beside the other with no intercellular spaces. Also, the outer layer of the epidermal cells and also the side walls of the epidermal cells are thick when compared to the inner layer. This is to prevent loss of water from the plant body. Also, in the aerial parts of the plant, we will have a thin layer of wax just on the outside of the epidermal cells. Okay, this layer has a substance called as cutin, which is water resistant. But this layer is thick in case of plants that are growing in deserts. This is again to prevent loss of water, okay, from the plant. And the layer of wax is present in the aerial part of the plant body. Now, what are the other functions of the epidermis? Epidermis protects the plants against water loss, against mechanical injury, alright, and also protects the plants against any fungi which may be parasitic. Okay, so parasites meaning what? These parasitic fungi are those fungi which will attack the plant, attach themselves to the plant and draw all the nutrition from the plant, thereby killing the plant eventually. Okay, so in order to protect the plant from such invasions, the epidermal layer is present and it is protecting the plant to some extent. Now, the epidermis within the leaf is not continuous. It is interrupted by stomata. Stomata is plural, stoma is singular. And there are also guard cells which are guarding the stomata. I hope you know all this, isn't it? Also, in the roots, the root hair, the epidermis of the root will have unicellular root hairs. Okay, these root hairs will maximize or increase the surface area and help to absorb more water and mineral nutrients from the soil. In the tree trunk, the initial epidermal layer which was present will rupture and a few cells in the cortex will start dividing to form a layer of or to form the cork which will be deposited with a substance called as suberin which is impervious to water and gases. I hope topics that I've covered up until now are clear. I will see you in the next video wherein I'll be discussing about complex permanent tissues. I hope all of you have understood the concept of epidermis that I've discussed just now. See you all in the next one. Take care.